Hey, what's going on YouTube? PB the Fox here with the Ravnica Historical Society, back with another preview video today. There weren't a whole lot of them. I waited, it's almost 4 o'clock. I was pushing this as late as I could in the day, hoping that something super exciting would break today, but it was kind of a little bit of a, I don't want to say, it was a lull, I guess, just compared to, because yesterday so much stuff came out, and even the day before. Today there weren't really any big hits, so it kind of feels like a lull. But it's still huge, right? And there are tons of cards to go. So, moving on, the first one we're going to be looking at today is Static Discharge. It's a sorcery for 1 and a red. Static Discharge deals X damage to any target, where X is 3 plus the number of charge counters on Static Discharge. Then, put a perpetual charge counter on this card, and each card named Static Discharge in your hand, library, and graveyard. So your static discharges pump up your other static discharges for later in the game, but also, if you're able to somehow recast your static discharges, they're worth even more damage. So it's kind of interesting thinking about pairing this with Dreadhorde Arcanist. I don't know if that's any good because you need a consistent way to pump the Arcanist's power, right? Like, either some effect or I guess an equipment or something. It's kind of hard to do that, but I think it's super cool that they've now made a burn spell that pumps up into the late game, basically. Even if you don't intend on recasting them, you can randomly draw a burn spell that does 5 instead of 3 for the same price. And it's just a cool space to explore. I think this is a pretty tame version of that, but it's a cool thing to see. I really like the art too. I'm looking at this art right now. The shape of that static is very cool. Yeah, you potentially get highly rewarded for graveyard recursion and copies with this. And copies. Hey, didn't think about that either. Copying this spell, also pretty good. It's a yeah. We'll upvote with this one, just because it's cool. Pretty interesting card to see. Let's move on here. Hardened Scales. That's exciting. We all know what Hardened Scales does. If one or more +1/+1 counters will be placed on a creature you control, instead, well, that many +1/+1 counters, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. So basically, you get an extra counter every time you put a counter on something. This, we have Hardened Scales, we have Snake. I don't know if a +1/+1 deck is good enough in Historic, though. We don't have a huge payoff like Ballista to make it worth it. And honestly, I don't think I want to see Ballista and Heliod on Arena in Historic yet. I think it would be cool eventually, because I think that's on the same power level as a bunch of other stuff that I want to see eventually come to Historic. But I like the idea of taking 2 or 3 years to really like slow burn and rev it up into like a really hot, high-powered format. So I think adding Hardened Scales is good in the long term. If they ever make Brawl a thing, it's great there. But in terms of just competitive Historic, I like that it exists, but I don't think it pushes counters into some like new metagame status. There's already like not a counter deck, and I just can't think of any creatures that are really good enough. Like, we don't even have Hangerback Walker. We don't have any really good +1 counter payoffs. Stonecoil Serpent is like sort of the best thing. Sort of the best thing. I think we need a few more payoffs and like a little bit more efficiency in the +1 department, and then it could be playable depending on the meta. But like I said, all around, just happy to see Hardened Scales joining the family. And then the last one we're going to peek at today is Managorger Phoenix. I wish... Can we find a little bit better picture of it? Yeah, it's the same image. Anyway, whatever. For 2 red, it is a 2/2 Phoenix. It cannot block. Flies, of course. Whenever you cast a spell, if Managorger Phoenix is in your graveyard, put a flame counter on Phoenix for each red in that spell's mana cost. If Managorger Phoenix has 5 or more flame counters on it, return it to the battlefield, and it perpetually gets +1/+1. This is a really, really, really cool card for burn decks. and kind of just red aggressive decks in general. You need it to be a mono red deck. Also the art, like, that's why I was looking for a higher res photo. The art on this card looks freaking incredible. But, like, it's easy to see this card and think it's weird because of how much text is on it. But a 2/2 for 2 is not that bad. It can't block, which, like, obviously it can't block. It can't, nothing that comes back out of the graveyard at instant speed can block. It's cool that it doesn't come in tapped, honestly. If it's in the graveyard, you put a counter on it for each red pip in the spell's cost. So you're encouraged to play a hard mono red 2s and 3s, right? Like Torbran. I don't think Torbran's good enough, but you're definitely encouraged to play like Chandra Torch of Defiance. What else has like a lot of reds in it? Anger of the Gods. You're encouraged to play stuff like that. But every 4 or 5 spells you cast, this thing comes back and it's a tiny bit bigger. It's also really good if we had rituals, but I don't think they're going to give us rituals like at all. At least not for a few years. This is just interesting though. I like that recursion. It's really aggressive, right? This card makes me think like that's a cool aggressive thing to see coming into the format. And I think that's going to do it. We'll do one more little peek here just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Like the Squirrel pack's in here, but I don't think anything interesting was in the Squirrel pack. Like Chatterfang, the Squirrel General. I'm happy to see all the Squirrels coming. I don't think it's going to be good enough. Like Chitter Spitter, all this. Like the fact that they're just giving us... I mean, that is a cool card. Is that Squirrel Noble? A Sovereign Squirrel. Yeah, Squirrel Sovereign. Other squirrels you control... Oh, yeah, Squirrel Noble. Get +1/+1. And it's got, I don't know if anybody saw this, it's got the flavor text that copies Goblin King. Really cool. There are a lot of good squirrel cards. I just don't think Squirrels... this was from like Odyssey, right? Target creature gets +3, bone shards, blah, 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 blah. When it enters, create 2 squirrels. Squirrels you control. No, that's not good enough. I was hoping it would loop back around. Dang it. Dang it. But, like, this isn't good enough, right? I don't know. Forest Walk is kind of interesting, though. In some of those, like, in the red-green and green-white matchups against this, that's cool that they have a Forest Walker. If one or more tokens would be created, that many plus... Those tokens plus that many... Oh, wait. Yeah, so it doubles your squirrels. Doubles all your tokens, I guess. And then you can sack squirrels to kill creatures or make a creature bigger. But mostly kill creatures. I don't know. It's just too slow. This thing is like just a 2/2 for 3. This thing's not good enough. You may sacrifice a token if you do put an acorn on it. Just don't think it's good enough. Don't think it's quite good enough. Nothing else. Yeah, scaled up, squirrel. Oh yeah, we'll talk about the modular card real quick. We'll talk about the modular card. Zabaz. I don't know if it's good enough, but it's a really cool looking card. The art is actually sick. A legendary creature. I like that it's a legend. It's a 0. Well, it's a 1/1 flyer for 1. Well, it doesn't actually fly. That's right. It's just a 1/1 for 1 that you can pay to fly. And then if your modular triggers would move a counter, that many +1 are moved instead. So you're really incentivized to modularize your creatures often. Early and often, because this thing comes down on turn 1. It's modular itself, although it won't double its own counter, sadly. But I like that it can smash your own stuff to move those counters at instant speed no matter what. Like, it is a sacrifice outlet for your modular. It's pretty cool. Static Discharge. This thing's kind of interesting. Probably not good enough. A 2/2 first strike for 3 that puts a +1/+1 on each other artifact creature. Maybe. Maybe it's good enough. It's very interesting that these are artifact creatures. Tempered Steel is like maybe gonna be a thing. It would be really cool to see Tempered Steel like come out and be like a tier 2 deck. Or even a tier 1 would be better. Let's read this comic and then we'll get out of here for the day. How can you create all these cards with random effects for Arena? It's going to ruin Historic. If I wanted to play Hearthstone, I would. This shouldn't be part of Magic. Why would you make such polarizing changes to the game? To distract players from Arena's predatory business practices. Oh. Yeah, I don't think so. I gotta say, I don't think so. I know people feel like it's predatory, but honestly, the game costs what it costs. The game is much cheaper to play than regular Magic. This game is so much cheaper than Magic the Gathering. I want to say, I'm trying to think here, trying to do some quick mental math. I've probably total, since the beta, I feel like I've spent about $500 on this game. But they've usually been pretty big purchases. I usually buy $100 worth of stuff. I know not everybody can afford to spend $100 at a time. That sucks. I would recommend, honestly, save your money and just spend it in bursts. Like, just deal with it. Don't take a less... It's like taking trade-in from GameStop or Disc Replay or something and taking, like, half or quarter value on, like, expensive shit just to save yourself some time. Like, you can sell that stuff on Facebook or eBay for easy and pay, like, 15% instead of 50%. It's worth the time. Same thing here. Like, only ever buy $100 worth of gems. Don't buy 20 just because you want something right now, if you can't afford it, because you're hamstringing yourself in the long run. But anyway, so I spent probably $500 since, what was it, 2018 that this came out? And so, like, all of 2020 and all of 2019, right? 2.5 years, give or take. And, like, here's my collection. It's pretty damn big. I don't have everything, but just scrolling through my white, rares, and mythics, like, that's how many I have. And then we're in the blue, and they're from different times. Like, there's certain sets that are more represented and sets that are underrepresented. Like, Jumpstart, I've opened a few packs of Jumpstart, but up until the recent, like, redo, I missed the first one, so I only had the ones I crafted. I had 0 Jumpstart cards that weren't in decks. Same with, like, Throne. There's not a lot of Throne in here because I didn't open a lot of Throne. There's a bunch of Ravnica. The first 2, I kind of went softer on War of the Spark, although there's still quite a bit of it in here. And just, like, you know, it's decent. It's not huge, but for $500, like, it's a pretty good amount. I've got pretty much a full set of dual lands. I think I'm missing, like, 2. I think I have 38 out of 40. But, like, the lands are together. The multicolored stuff is kind of together. The artifacts are, like, sort of there. And so to say that Arena is predatory, like, the predatory business practices. If I spent $500 on paper Magic, I would have, depending on the format, 1 or 2 decks. Like, maybe in the last 2.5 years, if I spent $500 on Standard, that would be, like, pretty cheap. Honestly, for me, I feel like $500 would have been a steal to stay in Standard for 2 years. So almost impossible. As far as Modern or any other format, Pioneer, like, you can't even buy a full deck for $500, let alone all of the decks that I have on here. Like, I understand that people are mad that you can't sell your cards, but that's kind of a price you're paying in exchange for removing a bunch of other negative stuff from Magic. Like, for me, for years, my practice playing Magic was on Wednesdays I would go play Legacy, which was hopefully 4 rounds of Legacy. Hopefully 4, sometimes only 3, usually 4 rounds, and then you had to hope that you didn't get a bye, and maybe a tournament on Saturdays where I would go like 5 extra rounds. So on a good week, a really good week, I would play 9 best of 3 rounds of Magic, and that was me in, like, my peak performance, honestly. Was me doing that, and maybe getting together and, like, playing some extra games with friends every couple of weeks. It was bad. Now I'll play 9 matches in a day or 2, depending on how hard I'm grinding. Like, right now it's really bad. I'm not even going to pull up my GG because I haven't been playing at all. I'm just waiting now for Jumpstart to come out. But before, the last couple months when I've really been grinding, 5, 6, 7, 8 matches a day easily. Like, playing 5 matches a day every day for a week, no problem for me when I'm, like, really having fun with the format. And it's just so much more Magic that, like, no, I can't sell parts of my collection. But if I wanted to, I could try to sell the entire account probably easily for, like, $400 or $500, right? I could easily sell this account for $250. Like, somebody who wanted to play this game but didn't have much of a collection, or even if they had, like, an account that maybe they've spent, like, $50 on and a lot of hours grinding, They might look at this account and spend $300 on it and be like, yeah, that's got just as much or more stuff than I have now. And it's more targeted. There's a lot more historic. And you just play with 2 accounts. Like, that's kind of stupid. But if it's what you got to do, it's what you got to do. Have this just be your historic. Anyway, predatory, like, people want this to be a free-to-play game. And, like, you can play the game for free. But it's hard. And should it be a little easier? I don't know. Maybe. Like, there's plenty of people for me to play against. So I don't think the algorithm or whatever you would call it, the equation is wrong. It's not like I'm sitting here waiting 2 minutes for a match of Magic. So it doesn't need to be any more generous. Could it be? Yeah, I guess. Like, I'm not ever going to complain against giving people stuff. But, like, to call it predatory is hilarious when all these people are like, I guess I'll only ever play paper again. And you look at stuff like the secret layers that are introducing the mechanically unique cards to paper. People freaked out about that for, like, what, 2 weeks? And then, like, it's just part of the game now. Like, just Rick is in your sideboard in Legacy, and that's a real thing. And sometimes people play Rick in Commander games, or they play the Bat, or they play Negan, or whatever. And, like, that can just happen to you now. And that's like, not even an issue. That feels like decades ago that people were upset about that stuff. So the fact that people say, like, oh, this game's predatory because you have to spend money to keep up. Like, of course you have to spend money to keep up, but at least you're getting the full experience. Unlike paper, where, like, I think Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 are far more predatory to the paper market than they are to the digital market, being released as Jumpstart. Like, yeah, it's sort of expensive to acquire the cards. It's basically only crafting with wild cards and buying other stuff, or, like, grinding an immense amount of time through the event. But look what those 2 sets did to Modern. Like, if you had a Modern deck before those sets came out, goodbye. Like, half of it is probably still playable cards. Like, your Shocklands and your Fetches are still good, and some of your supporting cast is still good, but a lot of it's not. Like, you gotta buy those monkeys if you want to play an aggressive red deck. Sorry, guys. There's one budget build without them, but it's definitely not as good. If you want to play Control, like, you have to buy Jaces and Stoneforges and a triple-colored mana base sometimes. Like, the damage that those 2 sets did to the paper scene as far as, like, forcing people to buy stuff and being predatory is way more than, like, needing people to pay money to keep the digital game alive. That's how I feel, anyway. Like, the game is sort of expensive. I get, like, I've never played Hearthstone, so I don't know. I now don't want to say I never played Runeterra, but, like, I didn't play it that much. I've heard you can buy competitive decks for, like, $20. That sounds amazing. I wish I liked that game as much as I like Magic, I'll be honest. But for me to have to spend, like, $100 to build a competitive deck, I feel like that's fair. It's way better than paper Magic, where I'd have to spend $1,000, or even, right, historic decks are still, like, what, $500-$600 sometimes. So if you put $500 or $600 into Arena, you can build most of historic. You can build, I would say, like, probably 6 decks pretty easily with $600. Anyway, yeah. So now we're just off on a tangent about the economy. Thanks everybody for watching. Let's peek at the store. I haven't seen the store yet. That little light's been catching my eye all day. Ooh, a Kaldheim pack for 900 gold. I guess, right? There's still stuff from Kaldheim we'll need for standard. We'll take it. This stuff, not as exciting. 50% off, and they're all cards that came in the Battle Pass. So, let's open our pack. I'm out of soda. I get 1 can a day, and that's it. Alright, let's see what happens here. Didn't need any more of those, but that's okay. I doubt we're going to need those in standard. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see. So I'm going on a trip tomorrow to Kentucky to go rock climbing. So I probably will not put out a video because I'll be super busy getting the truck ready and packing everything up and making sure we're out on time. So there's not going to be a video tomorrow. Monday there should be, because we'll be coming back on Sunday. So I'll feel rested enough Monday to make another video, get back on the grind. I want everybody to have a great weekend. Do something cool Friday. Let me know in the comments down below if there's any cool spoilers that come up. I check my YouTube comments like 5 times a night. So if you see something cool, drop it in the comments. Let me know. I will reply and we'll talk about it. Other than that, have a great night, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. As always, I've been PB the Fox with the Ravnica Historical Society. You've all been awesome. We'll see you on Monday.